Alright, in this lesson I'll introduce the precision option, which alters the number of digits that appear after the decimal points in a floating point number. But what's great about this option is that it doesn't actually modify a number, it just kind of hides the complexity of it by framing it as a much simpler floating point number. So let me give you an example. Let's begin by creating a new data frame. So I'm going to do pd.dataframe. And I'm going to give it a argument of a NumPy dataset again. So I'm going to do NumPy, which is np.random. But this time I want to use the randn method. That's basically just going to generate a dataset of statistical deviations. Basically, you can think of it as floating point numbers between -2 and 2, maybe -3 and 3, just to generate us a fake dataset of floating points. And within the parentheses here, I can write the dimensions of what will be my data frame. So let's say I want to do a 5 by 5 data frame, and I'm going to store this in a df variable and then output df below. And there you can see we have our data frame. Because we didn't specify a custom index or our column headers, Pandas has defaulted to starting at the index on both ends at 0 and proceeding up to 4. So as you can see, by default, Pandas shows six numbers or digits after the decimal point in a floating point number. Now let's say I wanted to simplify this a bit. Let's say I'm showing this to something in a presentation, and I want to limit it to just 2 numbers after the decimal point, but I don't want to modify the number in any way because I want to preserve this complexity, let's say when I export. So what I can do here, if I take a look at my getOption method and enter the precision option, this is going to tell me the number of digits after the decimal place that are currently going to appear in any floating point number, and we can see that it is in fact 6, as we can see right here. So what I can do is do pd.setOption, and of course I want to set the option for precision. My second argument to the setOption method will be what I want the new value to be. So I can do 2, and if I execute that and do df, you can see that we're now going to get the same data set, but everything is going to be rounded to be 2 decimal places. So we can see up here that negative 0.29 has been rounded to negative 0.30. Same with this positive 0.29. This 0.414 has been rounded to 0.41, and that's all great. But what's really remarkable about this option is if I go to pd.reset option and I give it the same precision option and execute, my original complex data with the 6 digits after the decimal point has been preserved. So if I go back to df, you can see that those numbers are still going to be present. So it's a really great way to offer essentially a temporary view of data that's a little bit more simplified if you want to cut down the number of decimal places or increase the number of decimal places without actually modifying the data and having to do some kind of row by row or column by column or broadcasting operation with division and things like that. So that's just a very simple way that you can set the number of digits after a decimal point with the precision option.